With myself, Attorney Linda Bernard. I hope everyone's having a great day today. And we are delighted to broadcast to you live from the city of Detroit, Michigan at WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the entire world, as well as our nation, obviously. I have a great guest today. You can, and before I tell you that though, however, please remember that you can watch us and listen to us, and certainly subscribe to us and let us know what you think at any and all social media platforms, on any and all social media platforms, including obviously TikTok, uh, YouTube. What is the other one?
Instagram,
Instagram, right? All of
Twitter.
them. Yeah, I'm not a techie person, as everyone knows. I'm an in the moment, personal person, and so I'm not as familiar with the various what do they call mediums, I guess,
Social
that
media
and
platforms.
social media platforms as I should be. And the reason I'm not isn't because I'm not smart enough to know. It is because I'm very aware as a Detroit police commissioner of how law enforcement and the government utilizes those platforms. The more you're on them, the more they know about you. And they have really the ability to apprehend. They know too much about you. If your privacy, if you value your privacy, then you sort of avoid those platforms. And so I value my privacy because I know the power of the government and the power of law enforcement. So therefore, I'm not active on them in that manner. But I guess I got to start to be because I'm missing out on a lot of stuff. But my guest today is a fabulous woman, as you can see, a real woman, um, not a person who's like the woman of the year, who the White House said was the woman of the year, a person whose penis had been cut off and whose testicles had been cut off and who had implants up here. This was the woman of the year
Oh wow.
this year on May 8th and celebrated by the President of the United States, unfortunately. Before me is a woman and a lady, a friend, and an extraordinarily smart person who is a nurse and has been the chief of nursing for ER rooms throughout the city of Detroit. Welcome.
Well, thank you very much, Attorney Linda Bernard. Appreciate you having me on today.
We call her Nurse Nikki. Her first name is Nikki, and that's how she's known, and that's how she wants to be portrayed with throughout the community, because she's starting a new business. Isn't that right, Nurse Nikki?
Yes, yes. I'm a holistic health and wellness nurse coach, and also a registered yoga teacher. And I do transformation, energy, body work, and Reiki. And so I do quite a few different things. And so group health coaching is where I'm going to kick off my first event very
Okay,
soon.
so you're going to do that this summer.
Yes, actually, I'm going to do it next Wednesday.
Okay, where's it going to be?
It's going to be in Oak Park. I don't have the address right in front of me, but it's going to be in the Oak Park and 9 Mile Road area. On Coolidge and 9 Mile
I
Road.
see. And so, what will this curriculum consist of?
Well, what I'm looking at doing is actually having a group of people come in, and we're going to do height, weight. We're going to do blood pressure, just so people can know what their numbers are and get their body mass index, so they can just see where your numbers are. Because some people just don't know their numbers, and just talk about that. And then we're going to have a group discussion about health and wellness, what it really means, what's involved in health and wellness, how it's really more than diet and exercise, which is what's widely promoted, right? Diet and exercise to have good health. We're going to talk about that, and we're going to talk in addition to that what your mindset needs to be and how your thoughts and emotions actually affect your health. And then we're going to go into doing looking at the different areas of health, because there's multiple different areas, like 8 different areas. It's not just physical, it's financial, it's occupational, it's intellectual, it's various different areas of health that we need to look at. Then we're going to prioritize, we're going to look and rate ourselves in those different areas and prioritize. We're going to rate ourselves and prioritize where we need to focus on. Then we look at doing a SWOT analysis. So we're going to look at what our strengths are individually and what our individual weaknesses are. Then we're going to look at what opportunities and threats are. And those are things outside of you, things that outside of you that can help you, maybe community resources, family resources, things you can tap into that will be helpful. And then what are the threats? What are things that are harmful to you? Because it could be a spouse or someone that's giving you goodies when you don't need them. That's a threat, right? Because if you're trying to improve your health and someone's throwing pie and cookies at you, that's a threat. So looking at those different things, and then helping the group to set what we call SMART goals. So those are goals that are strategic. They're measurable, they're attainable, they're relevant, they're timed, and so you put a time frame to them. And so you want to set realistic goals with a time frame. And so we're going to do those, and then just help the group pick out one or two things that they can really incorporate into their lives that they can do, because we all have many different things going on, many different stressors and different things in our life that we all say, I don't have time, I don't have time. So we need to look and see where we can really carve out, even if it's a minute or two, what can we do for ourselves realistically that can really help us on our journey. And then at the end, just do a bit of mindful meditation and yoga, and then release. And so I've set aside like 2.5 hours in the evening time on a weekday to just really get started with a few people that want to come out, and it's open to the public. And what I'm doing is fundraisers for the Lymphoma Leukemia Society. So I'm not asking for any pay for this event, but for anyone that comes, I would just ask, if they're able to make a donation, they can just put it in the box. We won't know what it was, and then I'll donate that to the Lymphoma and Leukemia Society, because multiple myeloma is a big thing going on in the Black community, and we're doing a fundraiser just to help get funds for that.
What is the multiple myeloma?
I'm not super well versed in it, but there's blood diseases, and so those are blood diseases and cancers that affect people.
Okay.
And the statistics are showing that it's affecting Black people in a major way.
Female or male, or just everyone?
Just everyone, and that Black people are affected by it more at younger ages, and so maybe in the 30s or so is when we'll see it pop up in the Black community versus in the 70s in the white community.
It's interesting you say that. I have a nephew who is currently hospitalized. As a matter of fact, I need to go by there today, at Henry Ford Hospital. Mm-hmm. He's been there in intensive care now for about 2 weeks. He has multiple myeloma.
Okay. Wow.
He's 23, 24.
Wow.
Young African American male, graduated from college at Wayne State. Good kid.
Wow.
Really good kid. But he has who gets cancer at his age?
Right, and that's what they're saying.
How?
Yeah. I connected with a fellow, and he was approached by the Lymphoma Leukemia Society, and so he's doing a fundraiser. He's a lead on the fundraiser, and that's where I started getting more information about it, because even in the healthcare all these years that I've been working, mostly in the ER and rehab. And so when you're working in a specific area, I'm not working in the cancer area. I don't work in the OB department delivering babies, Mm-hmm. And so you're more focused on the area that you work in. So I have not been well versed in cancer. And so hearing these numbers was surprising to me, because, I had no idea that you were going to mention that, your family member has multiple myeloma. But that's exactly what they were telling us, is that in the Black community, people in their 20s and 30s are popping up with this blood cancer, and we need resources to help, because we already know that when it comes to health equity and health equality, that Black and brown people do not do as well as white people or Asian people. We have the worst outcomes, period. It's already documented. We don't have to debate it. It's just there. And so looking at this, how do we get the resources to us when these things are affecting us?
Well, I absolutely agree with you. I had never heard of it until they called me and told me that he was ill. I couldn't believe it, and no one else could either, because he's just so young and so healthy. Right. We don't know a lot about what causes cancer of the blood at all. And I ask you that, and ladies and gentlemen, I want you to understand, this woman is not one of those people that just, starts doing stuff and thinks she knows a lot. She runs the ER in major hospitals.
I have.
She's a bad sister. She can bring the dead back to life. I'm not kidding you. With her needles and drugs and stuff, she knows it all. She's extraordinarily experienced. And where did you learn nursing? Just for people to know that you're really super legit. This is not hocus pocus.
Yeah, I'm homegrown in the city of Detroit, and so I went to Wayne County Community College for my first nursing degree, Associates of Science, back in 1995, 96. And then later, after that, in early 2000s, I went to the University of Phoenix and finished up my bachelor's degree, and they had a campus in Southfield. And then I did an online program with Walden University, which is a pretty popular program, and I got my master's degree in nursing leadership from them.
So you have a master's in nursing. That's why you can
Yes,
teach,
I do.
right? I am very impressed by you and your own commitment and your own ability to do all the things that you do in terms of your own family and everything else. But you're saying that for this event that you're going to hold on, what's the date again?
This is going to be Wednesday, June 7th, from 6:30 p.m. to 9
Next
p.m.
week.
Yes.
Okay. That all ages should come?
Yes, yes. I'm welcoming children, adults, older adults. Yes, welcome.
And this is a fundraiser for the Leukemia Society.
Yes, it's my kickoff event because I've been said, hey, I need to go ahead and get started with my coaching and really do what my passion is. And so this was a way for me to incorporate the fundraiser into my personal passion.
Isn't leukemia blood cancer?
Yes, yes.
Okay. But that hits people at different ages as well.
Yeah, actually, I had a niece.
They're kids.
Yeah, I had a niece who had cancer. She's in her early 20s right now, but when she was a school-aged child, she had leukemia, and she had the chemotherapy, lost all her hair, you know, and she went through the whole round, and she recovered, and she's living a normal, healthy life right now. You know, so there have been great advancements in the treatments, you know, but we need the money to, one, help with the research, and two, the finances for people that are going through cancer treatments. You know, they're taking time off their job, they don't have benefit time, they take short-term disability if they have it, you know, and so these foundations, the Lymphoma Leukemia Foundations, they are able to help people financially, you know, with their resources that they get from the fundraisers. And so it's very beneficial for people to get the research and the funds.
So for people who don't live in Detroit, where can they find somebody, or do they just go to the Leukemia Society and find out how they can help and how they can get involved?
Yeah, they do have a website and phone numbers, which I don't have in front of me right now, but the Leukemia and Lymphoma Foundation, and you can Google it, look it up, and they have resources that you can tap into. And a lot of people just are not aware. They actually have care management staff and care coordinators that help people between their communication with the physicians that are treating them and with the foundation, because a lot of times you just kind of draw a blank when you get a cancer diagnosis or any diagnosis that, you know, is harmful to your health. You just don't hear all the information because you're just stunned. And so you need these individual people to kind of help bring you back to reality, and then help you with the information, help you connect to resources that are beneficial for you and your family members.
Everyone, you're watching Chop It Up with attorney Linda Bernard, Unwa, and you're watching us on WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the entire world. You can watch us, listen to us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, all of the social media platforms, which I guess I should get familiar with. But in any event, it's a real pleasure to be with you, with our audience today, and also to have with us this very, very distinguished woman, Nurse Nikki. And Nurse Nikki has been telling us about a symposium that she's having next week, but she's talking to us really about health issues in general for women and for the minority and non-minority community. This week, Nikki, I got a text, as a matter of fact, it's on my phone, from a lawyer.
Okay.
Who is married to a doctor. She's an OBGYN. And he sent me an article, and he was talking about what he and his wife thought about it, about the fact that black women die like 5 times more frequently than Caucasian women in childbirth, and how there's this great disparity in health care for pregnant women. Have you found that to be the case, and what do you think is the answer?
Well, it's definitely the case because the documentation, you know, shows it. You know,
it sure does.
There's plenty of research out there. All you have to do really is, you know, Google any type of research that's been done. Go to Google Scholar. You'll see peer-reviewed studies that show how, you know, these inequalities, health equities, health inequities and health inequalities and health disparities are affecting black and brown people. And so when you look at OBGYN complications and black women dying in childbirth and things like that, it's out there. You know, I've seen the news articles even recently about women in Detroit that have gone in to have a baby and never came out, you know.
And they
so
die?
They die. It was a mother of, she had like she had like 10 or 12 kids, and then she went in for this last one and died. I read about another article recently. Young black woman went in and died, and I actually heard about someone in the community that I was just overhearing talking that they went in to have a baby, and passed away. And so we have issues because one, when you look at health equality and health disparities, there's multiple different factors that go into why a person doesn't do well, right? And so actual medical care is really only 10 to 20%.
I agree with that.
Right.
People seem to, like
Yeah.
you're not a miracle worker, right? It's not
Yeah,
abracadabra.
that's only 10 to 20% of your health factor, right? The other part is your environment, your schooling, your education, your job, your access to resources, your access to good food in your community, right? Where do you go and get your groceries? Is it even available? You've got, food deserts is what they call them, in the city. Where if you live in a neighborhood and you don't have good transportation, how do you even go and get the good food, right? Because if you go to the corner store, they've got, stuff that's too high price or not good quality, right? And so there's multiple different factors and the stressors that are there. And also when you look at intergenerational trauma and what's happened to people of black and brown descent from our past, when you look at slavery and you look at what happened, during the 21st century as we move through to today, right? And so all those different stressors and factors actually contribute to the health of an individual. And so you've got stress, you've got high blood pressure, you've got poor diet. Now you have a woman that's pregnant, right? And if she has high blood pressure and stress in her life, now her baby's at risk because she develops, these high blood pressure issues while she's pregnant, and they can be very deadly if they're not controlled and treated. And then we don't get to the doctor in time. We don't get prenatal care as often as people that are not black and brown, and so they're not detected early enough.
But Nurse Nikki, everyone is responsible for their own body, so to speak. So if you know that you have any, as you said, pre-existing issues, blood pressure or anything like that, or anything wrong with you, why get pregnant in the first place? Why not just use birth control? And many times the women that have these issues, as we both know, are low-income women.
Right. Well, people don't know. They don't know what the issues are. They're not getting to the doctor regularly, for annual primary visits. And, if there's a child coming up and the mother is stressed and she's busy taking care of kids and or working and trying to maintain, a lot of times single family households, they're not detecting things early. And so early detection is key, and prevention is key. But how do we get that message out to the community? And that's been the barrier. How do we get the message out to the community? How we get people to and from their appointments? So there's a lot of opportunities and resources, but individually, how do we get people from that stressful life to take the time to get the information and get to these prevention appointments and get the resources that they need?
Let me play the devil's advocate for a minute. I'm an adult. I make choices, or a young adult, 17, 18. Everybody makes choices in life.
Right.
Why should society pick up the tab for my poor choices?
Right.
I know that I don't have a job or whatever, so why do I get pregnant when there's a zillion different ways I can not get pregnant? You know all about it. Why do I make these choices? Or I already have 3 kids, I can't afford. Why do I put myself in the position to get pregnant again, i.e., not use birth control?
Right.
I mean, at what point are people personally responsible for their issues? And the reason I say that is because of all of the commentary around the coronavirus.
Okay.
80% of the people who died were over 70, I guess. That's number one.
Mm-hmm.
But number two, for the people that were younger than that, who for whom the disease was fatal, some had pre-existing conditions. But the major pre-existing condition was obesity. They weren't healthy in the first place. So therefore, when a virus enters our
Right. Your
our
immune
room,
system
right,
is not able
right,
to fight it.
right. So I mean, there's this big thing about corona, but you knew you were 150 pounds overweight. So how do you expect now, society to say, oh well, you deserve this and you deserve the other? I mean, help me out with this.
Right. I mean that gets into the political questions, right? Why should we take care of people or do things?
Not people.
Things.
I'm talking about people that pre-existing conditions are
Right.
I mean not pre-existing conditions they can't control, like kidney failure, or a number, what they all
I mean,
are,
that can be preventable too.
blood pressure and all that. But obesity is the number one,
Hmm.
I think, health risk in the African American community, for myself and others. Is that your understanding as well?
It's a big it's a
It's
big
number
factor.
one
It is. Yeah, obesity is big. Um,
among kids even.
yeah, among kids,
They're
it's a big
huge.
deal. So when you look at these are just things I've studied. When you look at the food and the pharmaceutical industry and the healthcare industry, it all ties in, right? And so
I don't
food is
necessarily agree with you.
food
What
is
I put in my
addictive.
mouth is a choice,
Food is
and
addictive.
I know it is. I'm addicted, right? I'm just saying that. I mean that's a real live choice. I mean, when I picked up the potato chips, I could have picked up an orange or an apple. You know, um, when I eat the whole cake,
Right?
I could have eaten a
It's
lot
all
less.
a
I mean, these
choice.
are
I agree. It's a
choices,
choice.
choices.
It's definitely a choice. When you look at how the brain is wired and you look at the addictive things, they're putting things in food that actually cause people to become addicted to it. And so when you become addicted to something and you make a choice that you don't even want to make that choice, and you know you're making a bad choice. Like for me, I'll go and get chocolate when I know I'm not supposed to have chocolate. It's a feel good. They have chemicals in it that go up to the brain, and if I'm feeling down, that will give me a happy
But you're
boost.
not obese.
Well, yeah, I am technically per the
No, I mean, but
numbers.
not not from a real serious health
Yeah,
standpoint.
well,
Yeah,
from the numbers,
I
my
understand that.
height and weight, yeah,
Your
it puts me in
BMI.
obesity. Yeah, it puts me
Yeah,
in obesity category. But I'm allergic to chocolate. It makes me itch, and I know I shouldn't do it. And the extra sugars, puts on the calories with my thyroid condition. That metabolism that I have, it's not like everyone else. I'll gain more weight than everyone else. And so why do I do it? And I do it because I want to feel good, and my brain just does it. And so, yeah, I have a choice, but that driving addiction that your brain is sending signals, is hard for people to fight. Just like with substance misuse, cocaine, heroin, those type of things, we tell people you're making a choice. And cigarettes is a big one too. That nicotine, the caffeine.
that's
People,
addiction.
yeah, people drink the caffeine and coffee and colas
I'm
and the
drinking coffee
chocolate.
right now. I
Yeah, but
had to
people,
have it,
these
right?
are addictions, and some are legal, some are illegal. And so I take the
But
stance
some are
where
more dangerous than
right.
others. I mean, you're right. We all, like, I am addicted to caffeine. There's no question about it. But it's not as harmful as many of the other things I choose not to be
Yeah,
addicted to.
could be
You know,
though.
I'm just saying that it's an interesting thing. We keep
It's an interesting
pushing,
phenomenon. Yeah.
as you say, good habits towards people. Good health. Do this. Get up in the morning, walk, talk, do something. Don't just sit around and eat all day. Um, but we do that intentionally,
Yeah, it has to, it's a
and then
shifting of
then
the
we
mind. The mindset is the brain and the mind is a very powerful
no question.
tool, very powerful. And so I have a book, and it's called Unlearn Your Pain, right? And so it talks about how the brain sends signals to an area of your body maybe that was once injured, but it's all healed up and there's no reason for the pain actually. But because your brain learned to send pain signals to that area, it just continues to do it, and it just keeps looping and looping and looping. And so this particular doctor, and I haven't finished the whole book, but this particular doctor found a way to help people unlearn the pain and stop those pain signals from going to that location. And we know about if someone's had
Give me an example.
well, if somebody's had an amputation, right, and they don't have that part of their limb anymore, there's something called phantom limb
Oh,
pain.
I got that part, but I'm
Yeah.
not talking about amputations. I'm talking
Hmm.
about
But it shows how the brain continues to send pain signals to something that's not even there, and a person does experience pain because the pain is not in that part of the body; it's in the brain. And so when you look at addictions and you look at those things, your brain is sending these signals. And I look at a family member that I have addicted to smoking, and
so is my sister.
yeah, but they have severe COPD. They had a heart surgery where they had to have their whole chest cut open, put on a heart lung machine, turned off the whole body, get in and do the repair. You actually had to be dead on a bed of ice while they did the surgery. Come out, and the first thing they're asking for is their cigarette. And then still, with every puff, it's difficulty breathing. I'm like, just stop smoking, just stop. But just saying just stop is not enough because one, you're dealing with depression, and the chemicals in the cigarette have actually antidepressant effects. And so that signals that just keep firing from the brain, make people do things, or people do things that they don't want to do even though it's harmful. So when you look at eating addictions, smoking addictions, drinking addictions, all these different
I
addictions.
have eating addiction.
Yeah, we have to look at what is the mindset, what's the brain doing, and how can we penetrate people from a spiritual perspective and from a mindset perspective to get people. And that's why people need to go to therapy, and behavior modification is really the big way to help people stop smoking. It's not really a physical addiction, it's a mind addiction.
But I think when you say go to therapy, I am, maybe I'm being unfair, but I have not been impressed with most therapists. And I don't know, I've just, we say therapy and therapy and therapy. It's like putting a Band-Aid on a cancer patient sometimes.
Right.
It depends on the skill and the ability of the therapist, quite frankly,
And the type of therapy that they're doing.
for it to make a difference.
Yeah, the type of therapy. So there's different, and I'm not well versed
I mean,
in
I've
all
had
different
physical
therapies.
therapy and stuff, and generally they're not really helpful.
But there's different behavior modification. So there's hypnosis. There's different things that people can do and help people with. But we have to get like some experts that are experts in therapy and psychotherapy, and see what those different options are. But the mind is the tool that has to be penetrated and treated. It's when we're talking about addictions, you have to get into the mind, because we're doing things that we don't want to do, and our inner self is like, we'll talk to ourselves. Why am I smoking this cigarette? Why am I drinking this alcohol? Why am I eating this potato chip? When I know.
So why am I eating this second pint of Haagen-Dazs? That's me. I mean,
Right.
one is never enough. I absolutely have to have two. Well, a pint ought to be enough, It's what, 14 ounces? That should be enough, but nah, not me.
I read a book, and I didn't read the whole book, but it was called Fat, Sugar, Salt, or Sugar, Fat, Salt. It's those three words are in the title. But it talks about how the food industry actually puts things
That's
in the
correct.
food to make people addicted to it. And it started years ago.
It starts with potato chips, for example.
Coca-Cola.
You can't eat just one, remember?
Yeah, remember in Coca-Cola, they had cocaine in Coca-Cola years ago, and they took
Right.
it out. But, you look back, but they talked about how the food industry, and they go into detail about how, they add the fat, and how the food is just tasteless and basic. They add the fat, they add the sugar, they add the salt to give it this flavor, and then the addicting properties. And then you wonder why people. I was watching Wendy Williams on TV last night, right? My dad turned her on a show, and it was like, okay, we're watching this right now. And so it was interesting, because she was talking about how she gets up, does her meditation, and does her exercise and then she takes an hour or so for a lymphedema treatment, which is when fluid builds up in the lower extremities. And so she had this wrap around her legs, and it does compression and pushes the fluid, into the cells and up through the body, to get it out the tissue. So she's doing her lymphedema treatment. But she picks up this flaming hot type of Dorito or Cheeto or something, and she said, these are just delicious. It's like a party in my mouth, right? And so she's eating this, and what I said when I'm watching this show was, oh my God, I can't believe that she's having a lymphedema treatment, and she's eating this toxic food, which we know has that bad salt, which causes the fluid to shift outside of the cells and into the tissues, and she's actively doing something to push things back, probably not even aware that what she's putting in her mouth right now is detrimental to her health. And she also has Graves' disease and the big eyes and things like that. And I'm looking at that. I said, that's what actually makes the fluid push up behind the eyes and make the eyes bulge forward. I said, so she has no idea when she's at a very prominent person, very famous, has a lot of money. We're talking about her husband and cars and all this stuff.
Multiple homes.
So you
everything.
have all these things, but still the lack of knowledge about how to keep yourself healthy from a holistic health and wellness perspective was absolutely missing from her life. And I'm like, wow,
What is lymphedema? I never heard of it.
Well, lymphedema, I'm somewhat aware of it. They have therapies for it, but you see people with these really big legs, and the fluid is just caught up in the tissues of the legs. It's just building up, and the legs get big and they're swollen, and sometimes ulcers and blisters start to erupt on the skin from the fluid that's actually oozing out through the skin, because the pressure just starts to rupture out through the skin. And so I can't go into the reasons why it occurs, but probably from a lack of movement and different, issues that people have with their blood pressure and mobility and weight. But people get these big limbs, and the fluid just gets stuck in the tissues outside of
So
outside
how do
of
they
cells,
treat
the
it?
blood
You were
vessels.
saying
Yeah, well, they go
for her,
to,
for Wendy Williams.
well, she had these wraps on her legs. They were compression devices. I could tell they were compression devices. They went from her feet all the way up to her mid thigh, and they were, they do compression.
So
And so,
are they wrapped around, or
yeah,
these are just stockings?
they were. She had some type of device on that looks like it was probably plugged into like an electrical device, and it
Oh.
caused the compression to occur and push on the legs and push the fluid. But I have seen people where they have the compression devices and they'll wrap their legs up and they'll wear it for a certain amount of time to elevate legs. But they actually have lymphedema treatment, lymphedema doctors that treat lymphedema. So it's a serious condition because it can
My
be
girlfriend told me she has
handicapping.
that.
Yeah.
She's a very prominent person. She said that I guess her husband now sleeps in a separate room. She has to sleep with her legs seriously
Right.
elevated, and she has to wrap her legs every
Yeah.
day.
Yeah, because the edema is the swelling of the lower
Right.
extremities and the tissues. And the lymph, when you talk about lymph and the lymph nodes, the lymph helps to move fluid through your body.
What is it? The
The
lymph
lymph
nodes are
nodes.
in your legs? I thought you only had them under your
Yeah,
arms because they always check for them when they do the breast cancer thing.
yeah, they're in different parts of your body. So they're here, you have them like in the groin area. So you have them in different parts of your body. But the lymph nodes help to move fluid through your body. And
Okay.
so they help with infections and things like that. And when people have cancer, lymph nodes become affected. They'll spread through the lymphatic system in the body. And so we have to have healthy circulation. And when those lymph nodes are not moving things like they should, then they get this lymphedema condition. And it can be handicapping because the extremities become extremely heavy, and it impacts your ability to walk and do different things that you would do normally on a day-to-day basis if you did not have this condition.
Well, I did not know that Wendy Williams had that, but I do. I didn't know that's what it was called. But a girlfriend of mine has told me that she does that wrapping of her legs, and she has a bit. Her feet have to stay, which is a very uncomfortable position to sleep in if you're used to
Right.
laying flat. You know what I mean, or on your side, or however, can't turn on your side. So yeah, but thank you for explaining that to our audience. And again, ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Chop It Up with attorney Linda Bernard. My guest today is Nurse Nikki, a fairly famous lady who is really devoted and dedicated to health, who is extraordinarily well qualified with a master's in nursing and has been the head of the emergency room nursing staff. For your information, the best doctors and nurses in the world are those who work in the ER because they deal with the worst of the worst. People who are gunshot victims, heart attacks, strokes, everything that could conceivably happen on an emergency basis on a perfect stranger, and
Yes.
and they bring them back to life. You're watching us on WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world. You can watch us, listen to us, do whatever you like. I mean, come and let us know what you think. Subscribe, comment for us on YouTube, Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, any and all social media platforms. Nurse Nikki. Now, we've talked we've talked a lot about various health issues in the community, but I'm a police commissioner in the city of Detroit, and the biggest health issue that we see right now are gun related issues, wounds created by gunshots. Do you have any perspective on that?
Oh
On
wow.
what do we do?
What do we do about that?
But also, what do you do when you have a gunshot victim?
Oh, yeah,
Let's-
well, yeah, it's been a while since I've been in the ER, but it's all the same, right? And at this time of year, it really starts to pop off, and especially as you get closer to the first days of summer and being warm. People come out, on whatever anger issues or grudges people have against each other. You just see more gunfire happening. And so I know when I was working at Sinai Grace Hospital, there was a team of people, and I'm not sure if they're still there, but they would intervene right in the trauma room. They had a team of people that would go in. They weren't hospital employees, but they would come into the trauma room and talk to the gun victim. And what they were working, and Ray Winans is the guy who was leading, they would talk to the gun victim right there in the trauma room, and they were working to prevent retaliation, to prevent more gunfire. How do we stop?
I didn't know that.
Yeah, how do we
What are
stop?
these are not doctors. These are
No, they're not doctors. And I forgot the name of his team because I have been gone for a few years, but Ray Winans was leading. And he had a team of people with social workers and just community. He's a community guy. And he would come in with his team and they would talk right there in the trauma room.
If I'm
Which was
able to
very
talk.
different.
If
Yeah,
I'm
which
able
was
to talk.
very, very different. And they were making an impact, and they follow them throughout their hospital stay and then back into the community. Because when people get shot, a lot of times they want to retaliate, and then you have more gunfire and more deaths. And so how do we impact that? Because it is very
That
sad.
makes sense.
I've been in ER. Well, I started back in the ER back in 1999, and that's just one of the things that's just so very heartbreaking to see our young men, mostly young men, coming in their teens and early 20s that are shot up and dying at such a young age due to whatever's going on in the communities, due to anger, not being able to manage the anger, and just retaliating and not knowing what how to do something different. If this is what you've been doing and this is what you've been taught, then this is what you do. This is your lifestyle. How do we impact? And that's the question. How do we get in and impact? And
Well, it's the proliferation of guns in our community. But even when people have legal guns, I'm not sure you're aware, but it was about 45 days ago. We had a problem with the Detroit police in the Detroit Police Department related to two officers, a male and a female, both under 28. I think one of them was 27. Right? Yeah, they were living together, and apparently he shot her, so he was the murderer, and then he took his own life. Of course, when that occurs, even though he's a police officer, and usually when there's a police officer gets killed, there's a big hoop.
Right,
We have huge funerals for them,
yes.
and we pay for everything and all that. But we had to wait until we determined who shot who first.
Wow.
And so once it was determined that he was the person who had killed her, then she was the one, of course, that was honored. She's only like 24, and he was, I think, 27. But sad. It's just, but so these are people who knew the impact of weapons,
right.
who understood weapons, who carried weapons,
powerful
weapons, legally.
So now we're looking at human nature, right?
But use them to resolve a personal dispute of some kind. I don't know, maybe she pulled her gun on him, like that case we just had. Well, this is interesting because it's a sister and brother.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're in the parking lot, they work together, and apparently it sounded to me when I was listening to him on TV at his arraignment that she pulled a gun on him, which is something that girls would do. If it's a guy, if you have a gun, you're going to pull it. And apparently, then he shot her. But the problem was, one, his gun was illegal. He didn't have a license to carry.
Okay.
They were in the parking lot of the business, so they probably had guns in their desks or whatever, the usual in case they're getting robbed.
Yeah.
But very interesting situation. No, he like the young police officers, no previous criminal record, no issues, successful in his career. Both officers were successful. This guy's sister was successful, and so it's a very troubling, very dramatic situation. Gunshot victims.
Yeah.
So when you're shot like that, it makes a big difference. How soon I get to you in the ER?
Oh, yeah. It depends on where the injury is, how much bleeding has occurred prior to. Yeah, so you need to get as soon as possible to medical care, because if you need surgery, the surgical team is on standby. They're ready and waiting. That's why you need to be in a level 1, level 2 facility. You need to be living in an area where you have those facilities so that you can get that rapid treatment, because the quicker, and sometimes the police will scoop that victim up off
and put him in the car,
go.
like we did Officer Counts.
Yeah,
he was shot in the neck, and they just put him in the back of the police car and went full speed ahead to
you have to get there immediately
to a major trauma center.
Yeah, so what happens once they get to the hospital, they go straight into the trauma room. The team of doctors, nurses, and techs, and x-ray staff and respiratory therapy, everybody comes to the trauma room. The trauma surgeons are called. They come down from wherever they are in the hospital, and everybody's on right there for this patient, determining if this patient needs to go immediately to surgery, if they need a blood transfusion. What do we need to do right now?
But let's take that apart a little bit. If our police officer Counts, who was killed by a sniper, and the officers put him in the car. He was actually his female partner shot the guy who shot him and killed him. But we put him in the car. Okay. He has all that. Our officers were 35 pounds of stuff: bulletproof vest, huge belt, gun, taser. Extra, I call them cartridges, but they're not. They're called something else, with 10 more bullets in them, right. 2 or 3 of those. They got on all kinds of stuff. In the ER, you've been there. What do you do to get me free of 30 pounds of stuff.
You take some shears and cut everything off real quick.
But you can't cut through a bulletproof vest.
Well, I mean, you get it off the best way you can. So
You can get it. You have something that gets it off.
Get it off. Yeah, you get it off, and you get there.
And that heavy belt that I've got on, that carries my revolver.
Yeah.
And some guys have another revolver on their leg.
Yeah, I mean, I have never been in the trauma room when a police officer came in.
It's a lot of stuff.
Fully
it's
dressed.
not like me and you.
Yeah, fully dressed. But I know that our protocol is that you get it off as soon as possible. We carry shears, or I used to. You carry shears in your pocket, and you cut off and rip off whatever you need to get off to get to that person.
Well, this will open, the vest will open with that, whatever that stuff is that sticks together.
It comes off. They'll get
it
off.
The vest will come off, but just moving him may create him to bleed more. I mean, but you don't have a choice. You gotta get it off of him. Is what you're saying. The boots, the everything, the steel toe, everything.
Yeah, because you have to find the injury and you have to get to it. So it comes off. Trust me. You have to talk to someone that's ever been involved with one, because I have not to see. But usually it's going to be an officer standing by somewhere.
There's all kinds of officers.
Yeah, they'll take that stuff from you.
I mean, we all arrive, even as a commissioner, when an officer shot, I get to the hospital as well. I mean, not that I can do anything, but we're just there in support. But usually there'll be like 100 or 200 officers there.
Yes.
Because it's been on their radio. It's been on their radio, so we're all over. We take over the hospital, quite frankly.
Yeah.
Take over the
Nobody
ER.
in the streets, because they're all the hospital.
Don't try to go and say you're sick this day. This was a long day. It's police everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you just get it off. And then the triage team starts. Is what
the trauma team. Yeah, they get them in. And your eyes are on the patient anyway, so you're already doing a visual assessment of what's going on. You can see. So even as a trauma nurse for myself, I've gone in and I could see what's going on. And sometimes
and you jump into gear. You got your gloves on.
You have to be calm enough too, because sometimes people get out of sorts.
There's so many police in even the police come in. It's terrible.
You have to sort them out. You have to make them
you have to
move
make
out
a
the
move.
way.
You have to get them to move.
Yeah, so you have to have a strong nurse that's in charge and a doctor in charge.
So you got to leave.
Control the room. Not be afraid to take that power stand and get people out the way, because the most important person at that time is the person that's been shot. That's the patient.
In that instance, when I got there, they said they thought he had actually died in a squad car because of the nature of the wound at the neck, and I guess bleeding. I guess based on what you're saying, I don't know if I don't know the autopsy report, so I don't know if the bullet was still there, but it clearly injured him. It was a
major blood vessel. So.
Yeah, it's a major traumatic injury that he had experienced, and you all did your very best, but were unable to save his life.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've had people come in and they get tons of blood, and they get shipped off to the OR as soon as possible. Sometimes you can't even do what you need to do because, no, they need to go, and you run them to the OR, on that stretcher. You just go, and the team just gets busy and they do the very best they can, kudos to Sinai Grace Hospital and Detroit Receiving and Henry for all the different trauma facilities that are, because it's a lot, and they get a bad rap, for people in the community saying, bad things about the hospital. But when it comes to trauma care and getting that care that you need, you have the best opportunity when you go into those facilities versus going into one probably outside of the city limits, because one, it's done so often. Unfortunately, it's done so often. So you got the experts that know what they're doing. And if anything happens, you want to be near, one of these inner Detroit City trauma centers. That's where you want to be.
I agree with you. Years ago, when I was managing attorney for the city of Detroit, I did the contracts with the ER teams. There would be whole teams, like a doctor, nurses, and we had a contract with Detroit. They had a contract with Detroit Receiving, and I understood then and got to understand the value of real trauma centers, and there's a grading for them, 1 I think to 5.
Level 1, 2, 3,
yeah, 3, 4, 5, and I realized even then what you're saying is true, and a good walking example of it is the rapper 50 Cent, who was shot 11 times or 9 times, I think 9 times, and I say in the ER at Receiving, you all can talk about Detroit if you want to, but in the ER they bring the dead back to life. I mean, you guys are so good at what you do. And it's just your brain. You're so smart. But anytime a person can be shot 9 times and live, it's amazing. And it is based on the medical care.
It is.
And we do have excellent trauma centers here.
Yeah, I would definitely say if it's a traumatic injury or a medical emergency and you're going in level 1, 2, the resuscitation or trauma room, you got the best of the best people that are taking care of you. and you want to be close to one of those hospitals.
It's my understanding that a very famous, extraordinarily wealthy person in the city of Detroit was at a party in downtown Detroit, like on the rooftop over there above the Port Authority, just
Okay.
an outdoor thing, afternoon, and he started to feel ill. And eventually, the man, his lawyer who was with him, and a lot of people were there, but anyway, said, "Okay, we'll take you to the hospital." Now he's gasping for air. Instead of stopping, not mind you, downtown Detroit is what 9 blocks from Receiving Hospital,
Not far.
right up the street. You can walk there from the river from Jefferson Avenue to Receiving Hospital. They decided, no, I want to go to Beaumont. Go to Beaumont. Go all the way 14 miles to Beaumont Hospital.
Yeah.
By the time he got there, he was actually having a stroke.
Yeah.
He was
Time is
absolutely
tissue.
frozen.
Yeah.
And then they did save his life, but he couldn't talk, couldn't walk, couldn't anything. So then they took him subsequently after you guys got it under control, that they got it under control in Beaumont, took him over to Cleveland Clinic for rehab
Wow.
for almost a year. He can speak some now, walks with a cane, has a dog, a pet, the pal dog, to help him with stuff, and a walker. But all that was because they didn't want to go to a hospital in Detroit. I said, that's what your dumb ass deserves.
Yeah.
How do you do that? How does racism, because it's perceived as black and perceived as Detroit,
I'll
how
tell
does
you
racism trump that? And the other thing I want to add before you respond, I want you to respond to this too. When people have surgery, now when they're scheduled for surgery, they'll say, well, I'm going to Henry Ford in Northville, or I'm going to Providence in Novi. And they want to go to the suburban hospitals who are people who only deal with, routine stuff that I could cure, routine stuff, but they don't want to come into Detroit.
Yeah.
Can you respond?
I can say from my 25 years of experience working in the city of Detroit and having, going in and out of different facilities, that I'm not going to downplay any of the suburban hospitals because everybody's doing a good job, right? But a lot of people that are working in the suburban hospitals were trained in the city of Detroit. They got their training there and then they left and went out there. Okay, and so what I've seen is that, the ERs are busy, at Sinai Grace. They're busy at Detroit Receiving. In our community, people are accustomed to using the ER as a primary care visit or urgent care. So that's one thing that clogs up.
That's a problem.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're coming in with a true medical emergency, I'm just going to continue to say you have the best of the best people
Of the best.
that are there and that will treat you and get you the resource you need and do those interventions, get you to the OR, do those neurology interventions if you're having a stroke or a bleed. They have people that are doing those things, so you want to get there. Now, if you choose to transfer after that, but if you're in that local area, do not drive past that hospital. Don't have the ambulance take you someplace else. Don't do it.
They drove past
yeah,
it.
don't do. I'll tell you a story though, because back in 2006, my grandfather-in-law stayed right across the street from my husband's grandfather. They stayed right across the street from Sinai Grace. I mean, like directly across the street.
Northwest Detroit. That's my district, right?
Like walk across 6 Mile, and that's Sinai Grace right there. And so when he had his stroke, right, and eventually he did pass away. But when he had his stroke, they were prominent people, make good money, work for Chrysler, good insurance and things like that, had doctors outside of the city. They wanted to put him in the car and drive him to another hospital miles away. My ER experience and my expertise was like, no, he's having a stroke. He needs to go across the street right now. He's going
Isn't that
across the street.
amazing?
They were going to get the neighbor to put him in the car to take him. I was like, no, he's going
You
across
lost your
the
mind,
street.
right?
And so I had to actually physically show and take a limb, raise it, and drop it, and show that he was really having a stroke. And my husband,
They didn't believe
he
you.
believed me. I'm like,
How they not gonna believe you?
I know I'm your wife, but I'm an expert
That's
nurse.
not the point. You are
I'm an expert nurse.
the only
And
licensed
so-
medical professional in the house.
Yeah, so and he actually came to pick me up from my job and brought me to come and take a look at his grandfather. So that
Are
was
you
amazing.
kidding me?
Yeah,
They wasted
brought
all
me.
that time.
Well, because they didn't know. He was starting to not look right, but by the time we got back, he was actually on the floor.
Across the street, there's an
So-
ER.
So they believed me. We got the ambulance, and he went directly across the street, and he was having a big major. Actually, he was having two bleeds, and so that
Really?
was to go my thought was if he had continued to drive,
To the suburbs.
yeah, that event would I believe he would have passed away in the car versus at least getting that medical emergency treatment, getting stabilized to the point so that they could stabilize him, letting the family have time. But the time is tissue when you're having strokes, and so don't bypass these level 1, level 2 trauma centers with expert staff here in the inner city, because you will get the care that you need if you are definitely having a medical emergency. Now, if you're having an urgency, which a lot of people say it's a medical emergency, there's difference between having an urgency and an actual emergency.
What's an urgency?
Emergency is, are you dead or dying right now?
Are you in? Yeah. Can you die?
Are you dying right now? Within the next few minutes, are you going to be at death's door? That's an emergency. Everything else is going to be an urgency and or just a minor issue, right? And so the majority of people that come into the ER, if you're looking at, and I would say Sinai Grace, if you're looking at Sinai Grace, you're looking at statistically, if you're having 300 patients a day, right, you're going to have 90 or so patients going through, 90 to 100 patients that are going through what they call the fast track, urgent care type of area that they have. And that's a third of the population going there. Only like 18 to 20% of people are actually going to be admitted to the hospital that come through. All those patients, only 18 to 20%. The other 80% are being discharged home. They're being discharged home. And so that tells you that the majority of people going to an emergency department are not having a medical
Are not
emergency.
critical, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so, that's what clogs up the ER. That's what, makes things slow, because we have to make sure that you're triaging and identifying who is the person that's walking through the door if they came by private vehicle that's really having a true medical emergency, or is it an urgency that can wait an hour or 2 or 3 before we can get to them based on what's happening in the back with true medical emergencies and the crowd control. So there's a lot that goes into it, but definitely don't bypass, and that whole racism thing you talk about.
It does.
And I know
I'm taking to Beaumont because that's better. I'm like, have you lost your mind?
Yeah,
There's nothing better than receiving. They bring the dead back to life.
If you have a medical emergency, and always, make sure you call 911, because if you're going by private vehicle, there's a delay in treatment, right? Because if a person's having a heart attack or a stroke, those EMS and paramedic crews, they're doing life-saving interventions and treatments in the home and in the vehicle. And so if we're spending time trying to do self-transport, we're missing out on that opportunity to get that life-saving treatment, because they can start things and they're communicating with the physicians in the ER that are telling them what to do.
I never thought about that.
Yeah,
that space of time is life-saving treatment in the back of a ambulance, a professional ambulance.
You don't want to delay time going through the walk-in triage and having to get sorted out if there's a crowd, they don't see you, you have to wait until, the triage nurse identifies that, yes, you're having an emergency, while you're, so call 911 and get to the ER, closest ER as quickly as you can, and if you're in the burbs, or if you're in a rural area or something like that, and they don't have those services available immediately, like level 1 and 2, they have to have certain services available, like they have their trauma surgeons there in the building, or they can get there within a few minutes. They have to have that neuro team available on site, or they have to be able to be there within a few minutes. And so when you get down to level 3 and 4, they don't have to meet that same criteria. So you get there, they'll stabilize you, and they have to transport you as quickly as possible to the next facility.
But you're stabilized. They usually are able to stabilize you and then transport you, which is so important.
Yes, they stabilize and transport. So no one can turn you away. There's EMTALA laws, Emergency Medical Treatment and Active Labor Act. So no one can turn you away. And we have to, I'm not working ER, but hospitals have to respond up to 250 feet outside of their doors to any medical emergencies. And so once you come in, whether you have insurance, whether you're identified or not, they have to make sure that you're medically stable.
Before you leave the building.
Yes, and so when you look at different health disparities and health inequities and things like that, don't be afraid to go in and get treatment, because they'll get heavy fines and punishment if you're turned away and you haven't been stabilized.
That's correct. That's a federal law.
It's a federal law.
And I want to thank everybody today for joining us on Chop It Up with attorney Linda Bernard here on WJZZ Cool TV, the coolest station in the world. You can watch us, listen to us, be engaged with us on any and all levels on Twitch, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all of the social media platforms. Our guest, Nurse Nikki, knows her stuff, as you can see. You'll see her again. She's my absolute go to person on all health issues. So stay safe and have a wonderful day.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.